This is Thieves Cant Capers, unlocking the systems behind the stories. Welcome back to Thieves Cant Capers, our deep dive into systems, mechanics, and the games behind the stories we share at the table. I'm Jeremy Shane.
And I'm Chris White.
And this is the Draw Steel Job, Part 4. If you are looking for the basics of Draw Steel, or a discussion on the ancestries it features, or a really robust chapter on backgrounds, on careers and cultures, go back on the channel, find those previous episodes. Today, we are finally into Chapter 4, Chris, where we discuss classes. Hey, really quickly, thank you for following along wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube at Thieves Cant Cast. You can email thievescantcast@gmail.com. So, Chris, this is kind of what we've been building up to. We've expressed how we're kind of antsy to get to classes, but along the way, everything that we've encountered so far, for the most part, we've found some level of excitement about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've called it eating our RPG veggies, though, before we can get to the meat here in the classes. But now that we are here, I have to say I'm a little scared.
Yeah. This is...
I don't know that I'm prepared.
I'm with you completely, because this is the fun part. And this is clearly where the heart of the character's at, right?
Right.
There is a lot of material.
With that in mind, our look at classes today is going to begin with only the first 3 that the book presents us. Right? We can't get into all 9 today. So today we're focusing on the Censor, the Conduit, and the Elementalist, because there is just a ton of options in this chapter.
It is extensive.
Off the mic, we both expressed the fact that, it's really going to take a play experience to wrap your head around how all of this comes together.
Right. And that's why we're going to do an overview of the classes today. We're going to talk about some very general things. We're going to talk about the flavor, kind of what you can expect from subclasses, all these things. But
what you will not get. This is our own version of Draw Steel's intro. Let me tell you what we are not.
Right. Exactly. What you're not going to get is an in-depth analysis of every ability at every level that these characters have, because there's so many options. And
we would die.
And in all honesty, I think we can both agree we're not the people to be delivering that right now. Anyway, we don't have the experience to share that. And so we've done some study, and we've tried to understand these classes a little better, but to get in depth in the mechanics of every one of these abilities would be overwhelming. And plus, I think a full show would be required for each class, no doubt. The other thing to understand is these classes, we will draw parallels when we can with something from other gaming systems, particularly really popular ones like D&D and things like that. But they are their own beast. They are their own unique flavor and a very unique approach. So while on a surface level, they may appear similar to classes or tropes that you've seen in other games, they are unique.
Right. These are touchstones, not direct analogs. So if we do make that comparison, that's what we mean by that comparison. It's merely a touchstone. So what makes up a Draw Steel class? Well, Chris, you mentioned subclasses. Every class has a suite of subclasses to choose from. Each class also grants abilities. All characters have access to a few basic abilities, those free strikes plus the grab and knock back maneuvers. Class abilities are a little more focused. They might be main actions, maneuvers, a triggered action, or some other part of your turn. You get your signature ability, which is kind of an at-will power that you can go back to, and you get your heroic abilities, which will require you to spend your heroic resource. We'll get into that. Right now, actually, heroic resource is another part of your class. You earn that during combat, and then you spend it to fuel those most powerful abilities or to enhance an ability. Looks a little different for each class. You've got we'll get into these, but like the Censor has wrath, the Tactician has focus, the Fury has ferocity, and so on. Your starting characteristics and stamina are determined by your class, as well as your number of recoveries, additional skills, and a kit.
And remember, stamina in this game is sort of representative of hit points.
Other aspects of your class that the preliminary pages of this chapter delve into, things like potencies, surges, plus all the conditions that your character may be able to apply to enemies or have applied to them. Things like bleeding, dazed, frightened, prone, so on. Did you want to get into potencies, things like that right now?
I mean, when you think of potencies, I think the easiest way to do that is to think if there's a big, ugly monster that's, looks super strong and tough, and you're trying to use an ability to push it, and maybe, that ability is using your might, well, it's going to have some resistance to that. And so potencies sort of represent how difficult that task would be based on situation, based on the opponent. Those are going to be baked in to the abilities. And so there'll have to be a comparison made on the fly, but the director should have enough information that they can apply those, and it shouldn't be a lot of back and forth trying to figure out what those are.
Yeah. You mentioned the phrase baked in. In these preliminary pages of the chapter, when we get inundated with how to read a stat block and tons more of like key terms and things to track, it can be a little overwhelming and make it feel like these are all disparate elements. But all of these come together and are, as you said, baked in to certain abilities. So they bring it all together when it applies to gameplay. They just separate it all so that you do understand what each of these key terms means independently of the others.
When you think about an ability, say that includes a push, maybe it does damage and it includes a push. If I roll well and I'm trying to push that bull out of the way, I can probably do it. If I roll poorly, and it's all baked in, so we're not looking at a bunch of separate rolls for each one of those things.
Okay, anything else before we jump into the classes themselves?
Oh, I think we're about as ready as we're going to be. Let's do it.
I am shaken like a leaf. I need a draw steel hero at my side to guide me through this.
I'm here, baby.
Well, okay, I feel better already. Let's start with the Censor. We're going to go through these in the order in which the book presents them.
Right.
So Censor is at the first. First of all, every class begins with a beautiful full art splash page, full bleed art splash page.
I really like the Censor art.
I love the quote at the bottom of this. Every class has a quote that's tied to it on the page. And this one says, "We fight until hell is empty."
Yeah, that's awesome.
The Censor, you're at your best against the strongest foes. Your judgment terrifies heretics, stops enemies in their tracks, and even hurls them across the battlefield. If we had a touchstone for the Censor to a D20 fantasy game we're more familiar with, what would this one be?
I think we'd have to say the Paladin.
Okay. Feels kind of like a Paladin. Again, it's not a direct analog.
Right. But they are the will of their God made physically manifest. So you are your God's hand in the world. This is looks like a really fun class. Yeah, again, if you're into that holy warrior fantasy, I think this is definitely going to appeal. Their heroic resource is wrath.
Yes.
You're going to get that at the start of combat, or what they refer to as another stressful situation. So that's anything that's tracked in combat rounds, which may not be combat, but it's going to be an intense situation that the director is going to recognize.
Right, something that certainly is hinging on the dice rolls.
Of course, you're going to continue to gain wrath along with your victories. At the start of each turn during combat, you're also going to gain 2 wrath. So you can just think of this as the fuel that's really going to keep you moving.
That is what you're going to have to spend if you want to use your more powerful abilities, right? They are essentially locked to you if you don't have the wrath to spend, or whatever heroic resource the class depends on.
Right.
Those are grayed out until you have enough power built up to fuel them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And there is an additional way to gain wrath, and that's by your judgment ability that you have. And so you can sort of think of this as marking an enemy, I think would be the easiest way to describe it. And so, you mark that powerful enemy. Of course, the narrative here is, you're challenging the great foe,
Right. And dealing them holy damage, right, through that judgment.
And then you're taunting them. So, it's come fight me. So
you can impose a bane on their power roll.
Right.
So, their judgment ability at first level is quite powerful.
Yeah.
They've got the My Life or Yours ability. It's a feature that lets you heal yourself or an ally by spending a recovery. So you get that right off the top. Something that we haven't talked about, the subclasses for the Censor. These are orders. You're going to choose an order, and you've got 3 to pick from: Exorcist, Oracle, and Paragon. What's the flavor of each of these?
Yeah, well, with the Exorcist, you specialize in hunting your order's hidden enemies, is what it says. So, but it also does seem like there's a lot of mental abilities to this, a lot of breaking enemies down. I know there's some teleportation involved.
Yeah. It says you get the read person skill, so that tells us a little bit about the nature of this subclass as well.
Yeah. And then the Oracle, you sort of deal with corruption, fighting corruption. You recognize threats that others wouldn't. It tends to be more like some, I guess you would say, minor magical effects that you have access to. And then the Paragon is sort of the strong leader. They're going to be able to assist allies, and, of course, they're going to have access to the lead skill. Yeah, all 3 very different flavors. They're going to give you access, as with all of these classes that we go through. Each one is going to give you access to very different abilities. And so I think it's going to be a completely different experience depending on which of the 3 you choose.
As a Censor, you also choose a deity and then select a domain from that deity's portfolio. You gain features and skills based on that domain. So creation, death, fate, knowledge, life, love, nature, protection, storm, sun, trickery, war, each of those, again, whatever your choice is, it's going to just be a little tweak to what you're capable of.
Yeah, and each, as you level up, there's going to be abilities tied to that domain specifically. And so it's going to be very different. A Censor of death, or who worships a god of death, is going to have a dramatically different experience than one that, say, is love or nature. Their abilities are going to be very different. So it has a big impact.
We've already mentioned their heroic resource being wrath, and that heroic resource has to be spent to unlock powers. Those, again, are your heroic abilities, and some are priced differently than others. At first level, in addition to your one signature ability, you get to choose one heroic ability that costs 3 wrath to fire up, and another that costs 5 wrath to unleash onto the battlefield. Just knowing that I've got abilities that I don't have access to out of the gate, that I've got to build up to unlock, that really makes me want to get this to the table.
Right.
And see how this plays out. Right.
Yeah.
To see a party of heroes all juicing up their powers little by little, and just watching the battlefield turn into a maelstrom.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see this in action. Again, just kind of skimming the surface. Chris, anything else before we push forward?
No, obviously, all of these classes would warrant a deep dive. There's so much information here. But I think that's a good introduction, a good idea of what to expect.
Yeah. On its surface, the Censor seems like the type of class that will have a little bit of protection available for his or her allies, as well as imposing strict penalties to their enemies.
Yeah. In most fantasy games, Paladin is my favorite class. So this is definitely interesting to me. I would love to see one of these in play.
We move on. We're taking a look at the Conduit. The Conduit is the devoted priest of a saint or god. They wield divine magic that that smites enemies with holy energy, supports their allies, renowned for their healing abilities. Kind of sounds like a cleric if you're looking for that touchstone, but again, not a direct analog. This class, you're also choosing a deity, and you get to pick 2 domains this time. So while the Censor picked a domain, the Conduit gets to pick 2.
You have that closer connection even still to your chosen deity.
What are we looking at in terms of the heroic resource that the Conduit has access to?
Well, that would be piety, and it makes sense. You can heal, you empower allies, you can unleash holy power. All the cool stuff you can do is going to be based off that piety. What's interesting about piety is that, of course, as with everything else, as your victories increase, so your piety increases. And each turn during combat, you're going to gain a D3. So a variable amount.
That's an interesting distinction. These classes don't earn their resource in the same way.
That's right.
Right? There's a difference here from what we saw with the Censor. So if you are concerned that Drawsteel's approach to this game, making everything, not everything, but a huge percentage of the game combat focused, if that's going to result in kind of some sameness between classes, just reflavored, really the functionality is different here.
It is. Whereas the Censor was, relying on that judgment ability and targeting that specific opponent, with the Conduit, we can see that they actually can gain additional piety through prayer. However, there's a little risk involved there because the gods are going to get tired of you after a while, right? You're an annoying little gnat, even if you are on their side. Yeah. And so, you're going to have to do a roll. You can pray at the start of each turn, but there's different effects. It could be everything's fine. You gain that additional piety. It could be that you gain, they're impressed with you today, and so you're going to get additional piety and a domain effect. Or it could be that, you're going to get the piety, but you're also going to take some psychic damage.
Oof.
You're going to get smacked down a little.
You just caught your god on the wrong day.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I think that's really fun. I think that's neat. So
I like the risk reward.
How much do you want to press your luck? How much do I want to bother them about this issue?
Domain and piety effects. Now, those 2 domains could be triggered by specific events. Like if you've got the sun domain, if you take fire damage or holy damage, you might gain some piety that way, right? So again, your domain choice is going to further define how you are gaining your resources. Each domain also has a unique prayer effect that can be activated when you risk that prayer to your god.
They give the example of the war domain. It's like when anybody takes damage of 10 plus your level or higher. So there's a big hit.
When anybody does.
Anybody. Enemy and ally.
Okay.
And it's the god of war is like, I like that.
Yeah.
More of that, please. And so you're going to kind of get that benefit. And then, of course, those even stack. If some reason, you had war and death, maybe, if there's an effect that triggers both of them in one action.
You get them both.
You're going to get them both.
You don't have to pick one or the other.
Right.
Oh, that's sweet. Now, but it does beg the question that maybe we don't have the answer to because, again, we have not tried this around the table just yet. How much is on the stack of things that you have to actively be aware of, that you can't just be passive?
With a lot of these classes, it is pretty obvious that this is not going to be for the casual observer who's playing on their phone. Right. And like you need to be engaged because there's going to be stuff happening, not just on your turn,
off turn,
that is really going to impact you and the amount of resources you have, what's available to you. And so, this feels like a game that you're going to benefit largely from if you are engaged with it at all times.
You've got to know your stuff.
Right.
In addition to those 2 domains that you've selected and the piety and effects that are all tied to them, you're going to choose one of those domains to gain a specific feature from. It will also grant you a new skill. So again, you're going a little deeper here with every choice that you make. You do get a feature called Healing Grace. It allows you to restore yourself or an ally by spending a recovery. And you can spend piety for additional enhancements. So again, that heroic resource has numerous applications, which is fun. It's flexible. How about Ray of Wrath? A signature ability that functions as a ranged magic strike. It can deal holy damage. As far as a triggered action that you get to choose at first level, a Word of Guidance or Word of Judgment.
The buff and the debuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. Do we want to talk prayers? You get 4 to choose from.
Right.
Destruction, Distance, Protection, or Sanctuary. Provides a continuous benefit such as a bonus to magic damage or ranged ability distance. You can change your prayer as a respite activity. Next, we have Conduit Ward. You're going to choose one of 4 wards: Bastion, Quickness, Sanctuary, or Spirit, that provides a defensive bonus or a reactive effect, and you can change that ward again as a respite activity. And then, of course, you're making your choice of your signature ability. This one, you get 2 signature abilities, and then you get the heroic abilities at a 3 piety and 5 piety cost.
Yeah, it's a lot for a first level character. Again, you can see, though, how even at first level, it's going to be hard to have 2 conduits that are just alike.
Let's move ahead then to the Elementalist. The Elementalist studies the elemental forces of the timescape, controls earth, fire, the void, and more with their magic. Many of their abilities are going to cover wide areas of the battlefield, a lot of control. They've got a versatile array of tricks that allow them to both control combat and manipulate the environment around them. You're going to choose an elemental specialization. I guess this is the subclass.
Earth, fire, green, or void. So, earth is going to be more focused on like self buffs. You're going to be improving yourself, making yourself stronger. With fire, this is sort of the evoker, right? It's a heavy focus on damage.
Okay.
Seems to be green, manipulating plants and fungus. And so a lot of this seems to be associated maybe more with a debuff situation. So
Okay.
it's going to be hindering enemies.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But there's some healing there too, I think, or at least some help, some aid.
What about void?
Yeah,
What's your impression of that?
So void is a lot of movement. It's a lot of teleportation, illusions.
Okay.
They even mentioned making things incorporeal. Every choice is really, again, with just as we've mentioned before, the subclasses are really going to flavor the character's path going forward.
So you've chosen your elemental specialization. Your heroic resource as an elementalist is essence. You're going to gain that equal to your victories at the start of a combat. That's generally the case.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get 2 essence at the start of each turn in combat, and 1 the first time each combat round that you or a creature within a certain distance takes damage that isn't untyped, or if it's holy damage. So again, very, very situational, but the opportunity to gain a lot of essence throughout the course of combat. You're going to stay fueled up, I think.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to happen. I think it's going to happen quite a bit.
As the Elementalist, you also get access to Hurl Element. That's always a good time. This is a versatile ranged magic strike. It can apply various elemental effects like difficult terrain or forced movement, again, dependent on that element type. You've also got some triggered actions, elemental attunement triggered actions. You're going to choose between skin-like castle walls. What a name.
Yeah.
Or subtle relocation. So you can imagine, one's going to reduce some damage. The other is a teleportation ability. Return to formlessness, a first-level feature, allowing you to destroy mundane objects by heating them until they melt or combust. And then enchantments. You're going to choose 1 of 3 enchantments at first level: destruction, distance, or permanence. Each one will provide like a bonus to magic damage or ranged ability distance or your stamina and stability. And then finally, Elementalist Ward. You're going to choose 1 of 4 wards: delightful consequences, excellent protection, nature's affection, or surprising reactivity. I think a lot of these are defensive in nature.
It's immunities. Like, for example, with excellent protection, you're looking at immunities to acid, cold, corruption, fire, all sorts of different elements. Whereas Delightful Consequences, which is related to the void magic, when you take damage, you gain a surge. So, yeah, all of them have varying effects, basically oftentimes reactionary to you taking damage or being under attack.
As far as your abilities go, the Elementalist is another class that gets 2 signature abilities at first level, and then plus your 3 essence and 5 essence heroic ability choices as well. Final impressions of the Elementalist class.
You know, looking at their abilities and how all of this synergizes, I'm going to be honest, like, I think they are going to be maelstroms of death. Like, yeah. I think if they are, we talked about focus earlier, if you are locked in and you're really paying attention to everything that's going on, I think that the number of effects they're going to have going and how they're going to be able to impact the battlefield, I think the Elementalist is going to be amazing. Maybe more so than casters in other systems.
Sure. I've been playing more. We've both been playing more casters recently than probably we're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Right. That's traditionally not been either of our go-tos, but I've had a curiosity in my later years here to try things that I haven't before. This certainly makes me want to tinker with a caster in Draw Steel.
Yeah.
The promise of the power that you are going to be able to wield. That is about all the time that we have today as we start looking at classes. We've got plenty more to come. We have not touched on the Fury, the Null, about the Shadow, Tactician, Talent, and Troubadour. So we will hit those in future episodes of Thieves Cant Capers. In the meantime, look, we love to hear from you, especially if you have some experience with Draw Steel. What are we not considering? What have we missed? What have we overlooked? What have we gotten wrong in our analysis of our read-through? Hit us up at Thieves Cant Cast online, thievescantcast@gmail.com if you'd like to email. And I'm ready for a nap after that.
Yeah.
A respite. I'm ready for a respite.
A respite, yes.
Don't forget, we'll see you this weekend on the Saturday show, Thieves Cant, our standard show. And we'll see you back next week for another round of Thieves Cant Capers when we continue our exploration of Draw Steel classes. I'm Jeremy Shane.
And I'm Chris White.
We will see you next time